Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Imperial Guard regiments as we get into the Death Riders of Kreig. If you guys have any other suggestions for topics or Imperial Guard regiments that you guys would like us to create a video for, please comment down below. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe because we post Warhammer 40K content every single day. With that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Death Riders of Kreig. The Death Riders of Kreig are a famous and unique formation within the Death Corps of Kreig. These specialized units are superficially similar to the standard Rough Rider cavalry units found amongst numerous other Imperial Guard regiments, from worlds where animals used as mounts or for draught purposes are commonplace. The Death Riders form a special cadre within the regiments of the Death Corps of Kreig, and their inductees are chosen not only on the grounds of aptitude, but also for independent thought and initiative. Many future Death Corps officers are drawn from the ranks of Death Rider survivors. Death Riders are equipped with a variety of sidearms and saber blades, in addition to the signature explosive-tipped lance found in similar Rough Rider units. Death Rider companies are used both for battlefield reconnaissance, replacing the Sentinel's traditional role in the Kreig siege regiments, and as shock troops, using their speed and impact to smash through enemy lines. They are commonly used in the role of reserves, held back to break counterattacks or to press a breakthrough themselves. The Death Riders have earned their savage reputation among other Imperial Guard regiments for their merciless pursuit of fleeing enemy troops. It is standard practice for Death Corps of Kreig infantry to hold a freshly captured position, while the Death Riders run down any routed defenders. The Death Riders of Kreig are a direct result of Kreig's century-long civil war. As the hugely destructive war raged across the face of Kreig, it became increasingly more difficult for the Loyalists and their traitorous enemies to field tanks and fighting vehicles. Supplies for parts and fuel quickly became scarce. The knowledge and manpower needed to pilot the vehicles and keep them operational dwindled as the war death mounted, and the very land itself became so blasted and broken that not even tracked vehicles could cross it with any ease. As vehicles succumbed to supply shortages, battle damage, and lack of crewmen, the Loyalist Kreig turned to the ancient tactics of mounted cavalry to give them a competitive edge over their enemies. Breeding and genetically modifying the hardy local war horses and raising specially trained cavalry companies to ride them into battle. The Loyalist forces unleashed these new mounted warriors on their unsuspecting foe with great results. For nearly 3 standard centuries, the Death Riders have been a staple for the first Loyalist force of Kreig, and then once the rebellion was finally squashed, and Kreig was brought back into the Imperial fold of Death Corps. Despite the fact that the Death Corps is now equipped with Leman Russ tanks, chimeras in all varieties, and sufficient fuel, parts, and ammunition, the Death Riders still make up an important part of Kreig's ties to the Imperial Guard. Every bit as dour and fatalistic as their infantry brethren, the Death Riders are, if anything, more eager to sacrifice themselves for the God Emperor and the greater good of his Imperium. Faceless and nameless like the rest of the Death Corps, even the Kreig steeds wear heavy armored respirators over their eyes and mouths, obscuring their strange faces. The Death Riders throw themselves and their mounts into the midst of their enemies without a thought, typically at the culmination of thunderous charge with fixed hunting lances. The grim solace they take in riding down the God Emperor's enemy, along with a typical Kreig martyrdom complex, make the Death Riders a very effective and dangerous unit. Like the Atalan Rough Rider counterparts, the Death Riders are used as fast attack units and scouting companies. However, whereas the Atalans use guerrilla tactics and lightning attacks to sow fear and confusion amongst their enemies, the heavy cavalry companies of the Death Riders use brutal force and the strength of their mounts to carry a day. Their most singular aspect is the nature of the Death Rider's mount, the legendary Kreig steed. That is a highly adaptable form of the original Terran horse. This animal is now the product of extreme genetic engineering, tailored for strength, endurance, and aggression, with numerous additional biosculpted organs that allow them to survive on most polluted and toxic battlefields. Vat grown on Kreig under the auspice of the Magi biologists of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the animals are further augmented with subdermal organic armor, osmotic lungs, and a fully integrated drug injection system rigged with potent mixtures of stimulants and pain blockers. The end result is that the Kreig steed is capable of incredible levels of endurance and environmental tolerance. The Kreig steed is also a weapon in its own right, with its chemically enhanced aggression centers triggered at the rider's command, and virtually impossible to incapacitate, short of a massive bodily trauma. Masters of the cavalry charge, the Death Riders pelt across the shattered battlefield of the galaxy, trampling and impaling their enemies. With little ceremony, these stoic fanatics charge directly into enemy formations to lay waste with their lances, heavy sabers, and sidearms, while their mounts bite, kick, and gouge the enemy into a trampled, bloody pulp. Death Riders never retreat once they have committed to their charge. Instead, they fight on until their enemies are destroyed or they are destroyed to a man, and only the most strong-willed or highly respected officer can cause them to call off their frenzied attack. The Death Riders wear the same standard issue uniforms as the Death Corps infantry, including the distinctive heavy greatcoats. The Mark IX helmet is the same, with the extra badge attached to the front, marking the soldier as a Death Rider. The riders are selected for aptitude during the Death Corps Guardsman training on Kreig, and will have already undergone a rigorous series of exercises on the surface of Kreig before deploying to their war zone. As well as their uniform, a Death Rider wears an Ornamented Breastplate. This is a cumbersome item, worn as a matter of tradition rather than practicality, and many units choose to discard the item, especially when on long-range patrols, in order to conserve weight. It is made of plasteel with a hardened chrome facing. The uniform is completed by the tall, hard-wearing riding boots. These boots are also popular with high-ranking Death Corps officers, themselves often men who have served with the Death Rider squadrons in the past, as they are regarded to be much more comfortable than the Death Corps infantry's low marching boots. The Death Riders' role as a siege regimental reconnaissance force, as well as acting as second-wave shock troops during a breakthrough, means they must carry a lot of equipment. Death Rider squadrons can operate far ahead or on the flanks of many Kreig forces, and so must be self-sufficient. Saddlebags carry rations and other important supplies, such as chemical filters, along with bedrolls and spare ammunition. Death Riders commonly wear Type V respirator units, the same type issued to Death Corps Grenadiers, with a regulator unit inside a canister and worn on the back. The Death Rider's primary weapon is his explosive hunting lance. This 3.5-meter long weapon is constructed of a hollow lightweight metal shaft tipped with a spear point, which is also connected to the impact fuse of a weapons-shaped charge. This small explosive is constructed to direct the blast and fragmentation towards the target and away from the user. Once detonated, the user is left with only the shaft, which is then discarded. The lance also bears the squadron's pennant. In close-quarter combat against a densely packed enemy, or in close confines, the lance is very unwieldy, and all Death Riders carry at least one backup weapon. After the initial shock impact of the charge has been expended, a rider will reach for his saber. The Death Rider saber is a long, heavy-bladed, single-edged curved sword, using mainly for thrusting with a tip rather than slashing. The skewer-like 95-centimeter blade is designed to resist buckling in the impact of a thrust delivered at the charge. The blade ends in a sharp spear point, and the bull-handed guard gives protection to the hand. The grip's design causes the blade to naturally align with the arm when the arm is extended, in position for a charge using the point. The rider's third weapon is often a las pistol, carried but rarely used, except as a weapon of last resort. The heavy pistol is difficult to aim and reload while mounted and generally thought to be ineffective as a ranged weapon. And those were 40 facts on the Death Riders of Kreig. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I always love reading the lore of any Death Corps of Kreig regiments or any lore pertaining to the Death Corps of Kreig, just because I think they're my favorite Imperial Guard regiment. The aesthetic of them is just absolutely amazing. They look menacing just by a simple glance. with their gas masks and everything. At some point, whenever I scratch up enough money, I'm going to purchase a unit of the Death Riders themselves, because that model is just awesome. So Forge World puts out an amazing model, and I'm definitely going to add that to my collection, not so much to create an army or anything, because that would be too expensive, but just to have as a, a unit in my collection. But again, guys, if you guys have any suggestions for other topics of Warhammer 40K, please comment down below. And yesterday's video on the Atalan Rough Riders, there were some of you guys saying that, cavalry in Warhammer 40K is absolutely ridiculous, especially when you look at modern warfare. There's no cavalry. Cavalry would be destroyed with today's tanks and weapons and whatnot. But you have to keep in mind that, like this lore stated, there are some planets in the galaxy that don't have enough supplies to fuel tanks. So if you have a battalion of tank but no fuel, so you just have a bunch of hunks of metal. But if you have enough money, or if there's enough fields and agriculture to supply horses, all of a sudden you have a really good weapon, and that's something that the Imperium has to have in reserve, I guess. So if they go into a planet that really doesn't have any type of oil fuel, at least they have horsemen that they can feed and they can use as weapons. So you have to keep in mind that the galaxy is huge and it's very diverse. There are certain planets that, you need cavalry in order to win a battle. And I guess this lore really explained that. And then at the same time, these horsemen, or these horses, are not your regular earthling horsemen. They're super biologically enhanced. They're just creatures all in their own. But again, guys, comment down below. Tell me more about what you think of cavalry in Warhammer 40K and Space Marines without helmets, I guess. But thank you so much for liking, commenting, and sharing. If you want to support the channel, please hit the little notification button. That's the little bell icon right next to subscribe. And share this post with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever social media you use, whatever forum you visit. It really helps out. And thanks for everything. I'll see you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.